Somewhere in a factory in Shenzhen, a company just built a brand new electric car, put it on sale, and priced it at less than $8,000. Not a golf cart with doors, not a stripped-down toy with a 90-mile range that can't touch a motorway. A real 5-door hatchback with a genuine range of up to 250 miles depending on the trim, sold in the hundreds of thousands to actual paying customers. For comparison, the cheapest new car available in America right now, the Chevrolet Bolt, starts at just under $29,000. This car cost roughly a quarter of that, and the company that built it has now sold more than 1 million of them. If you enjoy stories about the numbers reshaping the global auto industry, hit the like button, because these take real work to put together, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. To understand how a company gets to this number without the car falling apart in a car park, you need to understand what BYD actually is, and why its approach to building cars looks almost nothing like a traditional automaker's. BYD didn't start as a car company at all. It was founded in 1995, making rechargeable batteries for mobile phones, back when that was a genuinely difficult manufacturing problem, and it only expanded into the auto industry years later. That origin story matters enormously because it means BYD controls the entire chain of what goes into an electric car, from the raw battery cells all the way through to the finished vehicle, under one roof. Most Western and Japanese automakers buy their battery cells from outside suppliers, negotiate contracts, manage separate supply chains, and pay a margin at every step along the way. BYD skips almost all of that. When the company decides to cut costs on a model, it isn't negotiating with a battery supplier. It's adjusting its own production line. The car in question is called the Seagull, sold overseas under the names Dolphin Mini or Dolphin Surf depending on the market. It launched in China in 2023, and pricing has moved in one direction ever since, down. When it first went on sale, the base model started at roughly $10,000. By April 2025, in the middle of an intensifying price war across China's EV market, BYD cut the entry-level Vitality trim to 56,800 yuan, which at the exchange rate that month worked out to just under $7,800. The specifications explain how that number is even possible without the car being unusable. The base Seagull runs a 30.08 kilowatt-hour battery pack, smaller than what you'd find in most Western EVs, delivering 305 kilometers, about 190 miles, of range under China's CLTC testing standard. A step-up flying edition with a larger 38.88 kilowatt-hour pack extends that to 405 kilometers, roughly 252 miles. The motor produces 75 horsepower, driving the front wheels only, with a top speed of 80 miles per hour. This is not a car built to compete with a Tesla Model 3 on a motorway. It's built to be genuinely useful for the daily reality of most urban and suburban drivers, a category the auto industry has historically ignored in favor of chasing premium margins. The battery chemistry is the same lithium iron phosphate (LFP) technology that underpins BYD's Blade battery across its whole range, the same fundamental chemistry behind the company's much faster charging flagship models. LFP cells avoid nickel and cobalt entirely, both expensive and geopolitically fraught raw materials, in favor of iron and phosphate, which are cheap, abundant, and don't carry the same supply chain risk. LFP packs are also inherently more thermally stable than the nickel-based batteries used in many premium EVs, meaning the risk of the kind of thermal runaway fires that have made headlines with other battery chemistries is significantly lower. Cheaper to make and safer to operate isn't usually a combination you get for free in engineering. BYD's scale and its vertical control over the whole supply chain is what makes it possible here. The size of the car is doing real work too. At just 3,780 millimeters long, the Seagull is smaller than the outgoing Chevrolet Bolt and roughly comparable to a Fiat 500e or a Kia Picanto. A smaller car needs a smaller, cheaper battery pack to hit a useful range, needs less structural material, and is simpler to manufacture at every stage. None of the cost-cutting here comes from cutting corners on safety testing or build quality. It comes from designing a genuinely compact car for genuinely urban use, rather than trying to shrink a family SUV down to a budget price point and compromising everywhere in the process. By 2026, BYD wasn't just holding the line on price. It was adding technology that would have been unthinkable at this price bracket a few years earlier. The 2026 Seagull launched in May of that year starting at 69,900 yuan, roughly $10,300, became the first vehicle in its entire class anywhere in the world to offer a roof-mounted LiDAR sensor as an option, the kind of hardware normally reserved for cars costing 3 or 4 times as much. Paired with an NVIDIA Drive Orin chip, the system, which BYD calls God's IB, supports genuine advanced driver assistance functions including automated parking and navigation-assisted driving on both city streets and highways. Even with LiDAR fitted, the top trim tops out at 97,900 yen, still under $15,000. It's worth being honest about the limits of all this, because a car this cheap does involve real trade-offs, even if the corners cut aren't the ones you might assume. The Seagull is small, genuinely small, with limited cabin space and a modest motor that isn't going to feel quick by any modern standard. Charging speeds on the base model are conventional rather than the headline-grabbing megawatt speeds BYD has built into its flagship Hen L and Tang L. And crucially, none of this is available to American buyers. BYD has taken a deliberately cautious approach to the US market, partly due to tariffs and partly due to the political sensitivity around Chinese-made vehicles, meaning the Seagull's extraordinary pricing exists almost entirely outside the reach of American consumers for now. Europe gets a version, badged as the Dolphin Surf, but at a considerably higher price point, projected below £20,000, still remarkable value by European standards, but nowhere close to the sub-$8,000 figure available in China. The sales numbers tell you this isn't a novelty or a loss leader stunt. By mid-2025, BYD had sold over 1 million Seagulls. In one recent global ranking, the Seagull placed among the top 5 best-selling electric vehicles on the entire planet, competing directly against far larger, far more expensive cars from established global brands. For a stretch in late 2025, it outsold every other vehicle in China, electric or petrol, Tesla's Model Y included. There's a broader pattern worth naming here, because this isn't really a story about one small hatchback. It's a story about what happens when a company treats vertical integration and manufacturing scale as the actual competitive weapon, rather than treating a cheap EV as an afterthought squeezed out of an existing platform. Western automakers have spent years arguing that a genuinely affordable, genuinely useful EV isn't commercially viable below roughly $25,000 once you account for battery costs and safety requirements. BYD just spent the last 3 years proving that number wrong by a wide margin, and doing it profitably enough to keep cutting the price further. The average new car sold in America right now costs just under $48,000. Somewhere in Shenzhen, a factory just shipped its millionth car that costs less than a sixth of that, with a genuine 250-mile range, and, on the newest version, a driver assistance system most luxury brands don't offer. The gap between what that means and what most American car buyers currently have access to is not a small one, and it isn't obviously going to stay that way forever. If a real, road-legal electric car with 250 miles of range showed up at a dealership near you for under $8,000, would you buy one? Let me know in the comments.